let's start off by telling us a little bit about yourself, Scott. What do you do, who you are, and what life looks like for you now?
Okay. So what do I do? So I'm a coach, a facilitator, and COO at a company called Hindsight. It's a small Perth-based leadership company. So Hindsight Leadership and Resilience is the full name. And essentially, what we do is we just help people. We help individuals and companies, basically with small things from awareness to big things from strategy, building EQ and emotional intelligence, really just to foster greater performance and have greater outcomes. So that's really what I do now, which is quite a long way from where I started. Who am I? Okay, that's that could be a pretty raw question. Simply put, I'm a dad. I'm a proud dad. I'm a proud husband. I'm a mad lover of puns and dad jokes. So we'll see what actually pops up here. I love axe throwing, fitness, movies, and gaming. So pretty simple. Prior to where I got to now, I started with 10 years with the military and WA Police. And then I went into mining and finished up 15 years in mining, starting as a technician on the floor and finished up as a maintenance manager looking up after about 400 people. So quite a different scale. And then, found myself a year ago moving out of BHP and into leadership coaching, and I love every minute of it. So day to day, don't get me started. I'll talk all day about it.
No, let's get you started. So cool. Tell us about it.
Well, you said what does day to day look like? In contrast, like I've just given you my background. It's all pretty busy, high pressure stuff. To go from that to now, it's so, I don't know, it's weird in such a great way. Like it's I never had a real understanding. I never had a real appreciation for how good a balanced lifestyle could be. I always know the idea of it, but when you actually experience it, it's amazing. So my autonomy and fulfillment is through the roof. Days can be very different, very flexible, but it's just so rewarding what we do now. When you see a shift in people, it's really cool.
That's so amazing. And I was going to say, so you basically, every single day, you're not having to get up and do the grind. You're just coaching. You're living your purpose and helping people. Was that something that you'd expected to be going into? How did you shift, or what made you shift?
Yeah. If I reflect on my time in different levels of leadership, there's things you love about it and things you don't like about it, right? And if I think about the stuff that I really enjoyed, it was all the stuff with people. It was being there to support somebody who's going through a rough period, or helping guide somebody through having a difficult conversation, or being there to celebrate the wins with people, and then as you go through the organizations and get more and more people within your sphere of control, it just that feeling just grows, and then when you're coaching leaders to do the same thing, it's just so rewarding. And while I was succeeding in my career, I wasn't getting that satisfaction as much as I went further up the food chain. And so I started going through this, I don't even know what you want to call it, existential crisis maybe, where I was kind of like, what's really important here? And I kept coming back to the same thing. I just want to help people. I just want to be there for people. And it kind of just was this thing this monkey on my shoulder, just bugging me for a little while. And during my time in BHP, I crossed paths with a fella who owns Hindsight Leadership and Resilience. His name's Brand Connolly, and he's just a weapon in more ways than one. He's ex-special forces, but he's a leadership theorist, and so I connected with him, and we stayed in contact. And I just reached out to him one day, and he kind of said, "Hey, come and work for us." And
Wow,
it planted the seed, and yeah, I haven't looked back. I've loved every minute of it.
that's
Wow.
amazing. Yeah.
So what is the difference, Scott, between resilience versus simply surviving?
Yeah, this is a good question. And having been in both states, I can completely understand this. Look, if I was to keep it simple, I would say the short explanation, okay, I'm making up words now. Explanation is surviving is kind of something that hardens you over time, as you go through it. Whereas resilience kind of, if you do it well, it keeps you available to things. That's at least my own way of thinking about it. Because surviving, it's not sustainable. It's when you're in a state that's just you're kind of just enduring, and it leads to things like burnout or some kind of suffering for yourself and others. Whereas resilience, I've come to realize, it's actually just ebbs and flows. Depends on your state of resilience, because obviously if you haven't slept, you're not going to be as resilient as when you fully slept, and so it does ebb and flow, but it's really just how you can go through something, and how well you come out on the other side of it. It's definitely not grit.
Yeah. I am curious, Scott, because I know that you've moved into the space that you are in now, which understandably also comes with its own set of pressures and burdens. And I just want to talk about that because quite often, when we talk about goals and goal setting and goal achieving, there's two ways to really be motivated and to achieve it. You can either drag yourself through it, meaning you can push yourself through those loopholes to attain those outcomes, or you can be pulled through it. And whenever I hear that, I often think about our attitudes towards the activities or that passion that we might have. I often feel, if you have to do something, you've kind of pushing yourself through that. But when it's a passion of yours, when you're genuinely interested, like, for example, this podcast that we've got running now, no bit of it, the prep work, talking to you guys, everything after it, none of that feels like work. All of that feels like a passionate kind of a role. What could you say about that, Scott?
Oh, first of all, I love that. I'm very jealous. That's great. I love when people talk about passionate things,
Thanks,
especially when it doesn't feel like work.
Yeah.
Look, there's so many different ways to look at that, and I think you're right there, because if you just go through something for the sake of going through it, it's going to feel a lot harder than if you enjoy it or you're prepared for it, right? I mean, if I was to think out loud and think like if we look at it like an analogy, like imagine right now you go, I've got to run a marathon. Right, and you do it. You're either going to be taken away to the hospital or you're going to finish it. But if you do all the training and preparation to perform that marathon, it's going to be a lot easier than if you do nothing and just do it, right? So it's kind of the same thing when it comes to goals and scenarios, because sometimes we're talking about things that you're not always wanting to go through, but you do. So, resilience in that space is, if you're preparing for, resilience could be how you prepare financially for something, preparing for a rainy day when something hits, you could be financially resilient. But, if you're going through a physical hardship and you're physically fit and active, that's going to make you more resilient to that. So it really comes in all different forms. Mental resilience is probably what you're alluding to here about the mindset approach to stuff. And so it could even be as simple as having an optimistic outlook versus a pessimistic one that might help you through it.
And then I also wonder, because you were in a position at BHP, you said, and then had you not been offered this other role, would you still be there, do you think? Ooh. Would you have tried to make this shift?
Sliding doors moment, Scott.
Yeah. This is a very raw question. The answer is actually no, I wouldn't be there. Yeah, there's lots to talk about here. I was in a state where I was quite successful,
Yeah.
but I wasn't. I was struggling with something, and I didn't know what it was at the time. There's just this thing, and I kind of started to realize over time I'm just going through motions, and a few things happened. I had a values conflict. I was having
Yeah.
this significant values conflict, and historically I might have ignored that to continue with the career and go, this is my job, this is what I do. That's not important. This is.
Yeah.
As you get older, you realize your values are more important. And look, the way you know their values is because if you're not willing to sacrifice finances, friendships, other things for them, then they can't really be your values. They might just be things you think are important. So if they're truly your core values, then they might actually conflict with what you're experiencing. And so this is where I was. I was finding I was conflicting with a few things that were happening within the organization, not so much the company, but people in there. And so this was kind of sparking a few things. And then at the same time, we also had our employee perception survey, which is something they do every 6 months to, how was everything going kind of thing, just to see it's a reflection of culture. And we had fantastic results in our department, some of the best I've ever had. And my direct reports in some of the categories scored 100% across the board. And I'm just sitting there going, wow, how can I actually do better than this? If my purpose and fulfillment is looking after people, supporting them, and allowing them to be effective, and now I'm seeing the results that they feel this way, what else is there for me? Maybe they've outgrown me. So these are all the things that were going through my head at the time. And if you'd had asked me a couple of years before that, I would have said I'm a lifer. I'm in the company forever. But there was a few things that led up to that. So like I said before, I'd also, the previous role to that maintenance manager role, I had the opportunity to study psychology. And I originally started thinking I wanted to do clinical psychology and help individuals later on when I retire, kind of thing. But I learned that what I really loved was organizational psychology and how you can shape an environment or change designs or systems, etc., to drive the right behaviors. I've become really fascinated with this. So then I went, cool, I'm going to go do this. And that's when I went into the maintenance manager role, and then, putting these things in place and seeing the fruits of that was just incredible. And I'm kind of just thinking, am I being fulfilled? And then having this conversation with Bram, I kind of realized that this is my opportunity now to do something uncomfortable, leaving the security of a massive organization, trying something different earlier than probably I feel I'm ready for it, but potentially having a greater impact across different companies, industries, and individuals. And that's exactly what I'm experiencing.
That's quite a leap, though, a leap of faith, because you literally did jump. I mean, husband and father, you would obviously be in that provider role. That would have been a huge leap. So something must have been driving you, like you said, like you weren't satisfied where you were, you needed to find fulfillment elsewhere. And then I wonder if that comes back to, sorry, no, I was just thinking about what you'd said earlier, like one of the things you work on is emotional intelligence, which I think is huge. So I think that would have played a huge role. And would you consider yourself someone emotionally intelligent? Were you always, how did you develop that?
I think everybody likes to think they're emotionally intelligent. The reality is,
we can blow your own horn, Scott.
I'm definitely empathetic, sometimes too empathetic. I like Daniel Goleman's work when it comes to emotional intelligence. And if you look at the 5 kind of components to emotional intelligence, empathy is definitely one, but self-regulation is another one. And that's something I haven't done very well historically, and I've gotten a lot better at it. And I'll give you an example of how that can be problematic, because a lot of people will resonate with this, and it's usually when you don't say no to things. So you want to help people, and people come to your stuff, and you say, hey, look, yeah, no worries, I'll do that. And what happens is your workload piles up, and you can't control it, and And so when people come to you for help, it's difficult to say no. You know, so that is actually an aspect of emotional intelligence, self-regulation, that people don't do well. And I was absolutely in that space. So you kind of, those things lead to burnout as well.
Yeah.
But to answer your question, generally, yes, I would consider that I'm emotionally intelligent. Part of that being, you know, social skills is a big part of it too. So being able to communicate with people and mediate or have the right level of conversations and read people. So
now, is this emotional intelligence got something that you developed and nurtured over time? Because I know every time I speak to you, you just have this immense wealth and knowledge, and you really make people feel like they're heard when they're speaking to you. You really have a presence about you, and this real in-depth of knowledge. I remember when we first connected, I remember thinking, wow, this guy really knows his stuff in this space. Is that something that has come about gradually, or was there a moment, I guess, in your life where things had really shifted?
well, first of all, I think there's something wrong with my lens. I'm going a bit red there. It's very, very kind of you.
We're washed out over here. So.
No, that's very kind, mate. And look, it's interesting hearing you say that, because I still think that I've got lots to learn, right? And I always do. To answer your question, it's definitely, there's been lessons in life where you reflect on and you learn a lot from, right? So that has definitely contributed to a few things, but I have discovered I've had a natural affinity for it. I learned it a lot when I was in the police. You know, I actually thought that, you know, when I joined the police, it was natural to progress from the army to police. And I thought that when I joined the police, that, you know, the best part about the job would be catching baddies, you know, but it was, it actually wasn't. I actually learned a lot about myself in the police, that the best part about it was what a lot of people probably couldn't do, which is being there for somebody who's genuinely a good person on possibly the worst day of their lives. And here you are being that one person responding and, you know, in that scenario with them, and it could make or break somebody how you responded. And yeah, I found it very rewarding, but you know, it was a huge burden as well. But I realized in those experiences that I was able to do that naturally. And so, yeah, you know, some of it I think is nature, some of it I think is nurture.
Yeah, you've always had it. And so the coaching that you do now, is it for individuals or is it for business, like businesses?
Right. So it's all the above. Sometimes I would do coaching on behalf of a company who sponsored somebody for their growth and development. They might have an individual reach out and say, "Hey, I'm looking for some help in this regard." Coaching in general, you know, you don't need to be a technical expert in the field, because that's more like a mentoring, but it really does help in a lot of cases because you can empathize what somebody's going through. So you don't need to be a coach to coach somebody how to have a difficult conversation or anything like that. But if you're going to actually guide them through it specifically, you may need to understand it. Yeah. So I would typically coach. I can do. I do group coaching as well. So, and that can be good for different levels of learning, especially if people have a trust within their teams. You know, they share their experiences in real time, and we learn from each other that way. In fact, nothing will ever really beat that, learning from a community-based perspective. But yeah, do all sorts of different coaching, from wellness coaching, resilience, to business and leadership.
Amazing. Yeah, that would be so fulfilling.
Oh,
So what's
I
the
couldn't even begin to explain
Michelle
it.
is
It's
jealous.
great.
Yeah.
What was that?
I think Michelle is jealous.
and because because you said did you end up studying psychology as well, or was that just
Yeah.
okay, so you do. Are you a qualified
Yeah.
psychologist though?
Oh no. I'm
No.
qualified dad joke teller, but no, I'm.
You use the tools, yeah. Amazing. But like you said, with life coaching and things, it's not necessarily the technical stuff that you need, but it does help. So
yeah, it helps build credibility with some people, because the key is trust. When it comes to coaching, the key is trust. right?
Yeah.
And trust is the case for a lot of different things, relationships in general, right?
Mhm.
And so if you take on, if somebody takes me on as a coach and they want help with their, what they're going through as a new leader, then they know I've been there, so it immediately brings credibility. Whereas it may just be harder for somebody that doesn't have it, but it doesn't mean they can't do it.
What's the most fulfilling type of coaching in the end? Is it the wellness? Is it building resilience? Is it the business?
Or the ones that get outcomes?
Right. These are great questions. All right. So what's the most fulfilling? I don't think there's a specific like area. And the interesting thing is, you're helping people generally with problems, but you're not there to solve the problems for them. So what the most rewarding part of coaching is when you see a shift, when somebody goes from where they are to where they want to be. So coaching is essentially a partnership. And so you're there alongside of, a person or a team, helping them get from where they are to where they want to be, just by asking the right questions and creating the right environment for them. And when you see those aha moments, when they go, oh, this is making sense, or like those, you just go, yeah, that's it. That's what I love.
Yeah. You got the breakthrough.
And obviously the person, and obviously the person needs to want to work on themselves as well. Like if they're coming in to see you, they're wanting that outcome, so they themselves are doing the work. Otherwise, it won't work.
Yeah, 100%. Like if somebody if they've got a fixed mindset, then coaching is not going to work for them. You have to be willing to learn and grow. So you need an open mindset when it comes to things, or at least understand that you have stuff that you can learn to move forward. If this is my world right now and nothing's going to change it, then coaching is probably not the right thing. And so it's probably more to understand what's actually going on rather than just going straight into something that has worked.
Yeah. And I suppose as you're learning about that particular person or organization, then and this sort of leads on to the next question, creating that change really comes from applying leverage, doesn't it? You kind of get to find out where those pressure points are in that person, that organization, and through that information, you can then start to create change.
Yeah. So it's what I tend to find is it's interesting you talk about leverage and pressure points, right? So what I've learned through coaching is, look, you could have a coaching conversation, and at the end of this session, somebody could feel amazing. You've made them feel great, but you've really been more like a cheerleader than a coach. And so, a really good coach can ask the right question to really provoke the right level of thought, and, for example, if you're picking up on people's disconnect between what they're saying and their body language, hang on a minute, I noticed, you're saying, oh, I've got a promotion today, but your tone is really low. What's going on there? Just asking those kind of questions where they go, well, and they open up. Yeah, it's really, really provocative. And that's the leverage you're talking about there.
Do you ever face resistance to change, Scott?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
How do you overcome it?
Yeah, no, that's a silver bullet, right? So again, it comes down to the circumstances. The key is not necessarily trying to get somebody to, be embracing change. It's more understanding what the factors are behind the resistance, right? So if somebody's had a bad experience with change historically, that could be their single source of truth. That could be their whole mindset. So you can ask a series of questions that will help unpack that. What do you know? What assumptions are you making? What's reality versus your perception? Because people actually, I used to say people don't like change, and I used to say that a lot, and I've learned I'm completely wrong. It's actually not change. Most people don't mind change. And I also say change is inevitable, except from a vending machine. But what I've realized is people just don't like the uncertainty that comes with change.
Yes.
And so, if you actually, there's an analogy I use when it comes to change, right? So, but what was your first car?
It was a Mazda 929.
Right. And what was your next car?
I think it was a Saab.
Right. So it's completely different cars there, right? So that's a change you've had to work through in your life. But if you imagine right now, I've just taken away your Mazda one day, and then the next day I've come and thrown your Saab in front of you, you'd be like, what the hell's going on here? It's likely a bit of an upgrade. So you know that the change has been made for the better.
Yeah.
But you're not included in the change. You've now got to figure out how to drive this new car. You don't even know why it's there. So you're going to be like, what the hell? And so there's all that uncertainty that's coming ahead. Whereas you've made that change previously yourself. You had full context, you understood the decisions behind it, and you embraced it. Even though you probably had to get used to a new clutch or steering behavior and all that sort of stuff, you made the change work. And so life is like this when it comes to change. If you've got more context, or you understand what you're trying to achieve, it really helps people get through it. And COVID is a great example of that. Everybody understood what the issue was and what we need to work through, and look at all the people and companies around the world trying to get through it, but everybody understood what we're trying to achieve, right? So they just made it work.
Yeah, that's a really beautiful way of painting it, Scott. Partnerships and taking people along on the journey of change, because you're quite right. Change is inevitable, but as human beings, we do crave that certainty to be able to, know where the next paycheck or meal is coming from. And we quite often create routines, which we can then trap ourselves in, which we then have to work towards breaking out of. But what has all of that taught you in your leadership roles about human nature?
Yeah, lots of lessons. Look, what it's actually taught me is across all the different roles and different companies that I've worked in, people are generally consistent, right? They generally want the same things. They want to feel safe, they want a level of certainty if you can give it to them. Transparency. There's lots of leadership experts out there that talk about authenticity. And while that's a nice thing, it's also difficult to be completely authentic in work environments. And so what I think, or my view on that is, it's not about authenticity that people really recommending. They're talking about the transparency, being a good human, being there when somebody needs help, being open and honest. People aren't idiots, right? So they know when you're being disingenuous. So I think that's what is generally meant when it comes to authentic. Because if you think about the best leaders that you've ever had, or seen, you see more of a person than you do of a representative of a company, right? So you might think of somebody who's made you feel incredibly supported. They've had your back. They've made you feel trusted. And these are just the qualities I think people want, regardless of the organizations and industry.
Yeah.
Is there anything like that you've had to unlearn? Any, information about human nature and what you might have previously believed, but through the work you've done, unlearned that's not the case?
Yeah. This is kind of when you get to the point of vulnerability. What I've had to unlearn. Look, the biggest one here is that you don't have to do everything yourself. It's not all on you. I've always had this problem, I'll say, with asking for help. And it's not because I, don't need it. Is I always looked at it as a burden, or, people got too much on their plate. So, those kind of things, or, I'm the one there to help them, not the other way around. It's like that kind of mindset. And with a life that's all been about service to others, it probably fostered that a bit. What I have learned from that and changing that behavior is, people genuinely want to help you. They want to be a part of it. I guarantee you right now, that if I asked you two for help with something, you'd be like, yeah, no worries,
Absolutely.
Yeah, because people generally want to do that. And so
I've heard that too.
What's that?
Makes them feel special. It makes
Yeah,
people feel
absolutely.
they can help. Yeah.
Yeah, because people are generally inherently good, right? I really believe that. And you know, I actually do this now in a room of people when, you know, we're working with different teams. I'll ask the question, who here asked for help? And you know, you might, if you're lucky, you might get a quarter of the room put their hand up, and then I'll say, okay, who here would actually help somebody if they ask for help? Just about everybody puts their hand up, you know. So it's so obvious, but we generally think that it's just on us as leaders, and it's kind of comes with the territory. It almost it's implied that you've got to own this area, but the reality is, with the collaborative mindset, you're much more successful, and it helps to build resilience as a team.
Yeah.
I was just going to ask quickly, Scott, do you think when it comes to asking for help, people quite often get caught up in their own head with their egos and their, you know, own values, and we tend to carry a lot of things internally as human beings? What's one way of breaking out of that and actually being able to put your hand up and own that you need support?
Yeah, that's a good question too. To do that, you need trust. You need to trust the people around you, and it also depends on who you're asking for help. So if you trust your team and they trust you, it's very easy. Hey, how would you like to help me on this project? Yeah, no worries. Or hey, I'm struggling with this. What are your thoughts? You know, those kind of things happen over time, but trust is the big factor here. If you didn't have trust, then you might be, like you say in your head, you might be thinking, you know, you might be going through an imposter episode where, oh, I've got to prove myself, or you know, if that trust isn't there, you might be thinking, well, if I ask for somebody to help, they might show my weaknesses to other people. You know, that there might be those kind of things that happen. So trust is the big part of it. And there's a great model, or a psychological model called the trust equation, that really helps people understand how trust is built. We use it all the time. And the part of that is it's the intimacy piece in there, where how well you know people. So the more that builds, the easier it is to ask people for help.
Yeah, because there's a fear of rejection as well, isn't there? Like, what if they ask for help and they don't get it, or someone says no? So there's
yeah, that's a good point too. I mean, you also look. I actually think the best thing a leader can be is curious, and so if somebody was to respond that way, rather than getting defensive and going, "Oh, you know, that was not good," I'd be going, "Okay, well, what's driving that behavior?" It could just be that they feel overwhelmed. And so it might end up being, hey, I need help with this. Is there anything I can help you with? You know, so it can end up being mutually beneficial.
Quite often, going back to trust, Scott, it comes back to culture within an organization. I heard somewhere, when it comes to, I suppose, a lot of different factors, but talking about mental health specifically in this case, there's usually two parties in that scenario. There's usually the person who is having the experience at the moment, and then it might be a mental health first aider, which might be assisting in that moment. But quite often what we don't realize is there are potentially others looking on as this is unfolding, potentially in the moment in the office. And the way the organization and the way that mental health representative handles this particular scenario in the office is crucial to the culture and the way others will interpret that situation and how comfortable they will feel to have that conversation. Your thoughts?
Yeah, look, you're right. I mean, we learn by what we see, right? So, you know, we talk about cultures in organizations, and depending on how big an organization is. So if I use BHP as an example, the culture on one site might be very different to a culture on another site, or the culture in, you know, the maintenance team might be very different to the culture in the operations team. And I think the thing here is it's less around the organization and more around the leaders in those organizations. They foster the culture. So if a leader, you know, sets a great example when it comes to responding to a scenario that you're talking about, people are going to go, wow, you know, that was really good to see. I feel like this is a great culture. And similarly, so the opposite. If it's handled terribly and you're seeing people leave the organization, or, you know, somebody's just off work because they just can't come back to the scenario or the, you know, office environment, yeah, it really just tells you a story, doesn't it? So
Yeah.
I think your point about what you see and what you experience is your truth, or where you reflect the the culture. So look,
Yeah.
I when you say that, it's quite I have no doubt that there's people that experience stuff like that, and I have too. And so sometimes you've got to ask yourself, am I in the right place?
Mm.
You know, or is this something I can change? And if it's not something you can change, then it's probably not the right environment to be in.
I just really want to ask this follow-up question then, because it's kind of relates. So if there is somebody who is drowning, if they are really struggling, say, for example, they're not in the right cultural space, what do they need to hear? What is the message?
Yeah, well, on that, the assumption is that the culture is the issue, because in some cases it might be our own perspectives. You know, we can get in our own way. So the first thing to understand is what is actually the problem here? Is it what I'm seeing and hearing? Is that how things are, or is it just how I'm interpreting it? So the message to start is literally try and understand that. Understand the environment you're in. If you've got somebody that you can talk with about it and get an impartial perspective on, it might help to give you that shift. There's a few different tools out there that you can use that might help with it too. But because we're all quite biased, right? So how I perceive something may be completely different to how somebody else perceives it. So that's the first thing. Check to make sure that reality is accurate. Second of all, if it is, then it goes back to what I said before. You need to decide if you want to be there or not. Because people don't leave organizations. They leave bad leaders. They leave people. You know. In my naivety, historically, I've believed that I could go to these places and change the organizational culture. And in some cases, I've been absolutely proud to say I have. But the key to do that is to be supported above, no matter what your level is. If you're supported above to do it, you'll be able to change for the better. If that support isn't there, then you're fighting a losing battle, and you probably need to shift in the environment.
Yeah. So aside from helping people, like, what do you think people are truly craving then from leaders, relationships, connections?
Oh, well, it goes back to basically a lot of what we're talking about. You know, people, we're tribe mentality. You know, we like to feel part of something. We like to feel included. And you bring people together through common goals and common themes, right? So straight away, if you think about when if you go to a party or group setting and you find that you've got common interests, you're automatically drawn together. Hence why we're here talking right now.
Yes.
So these things naturally bring people together. So in terms of what people are craving, they want a sense of belonging. What they want from leadership, absolutely. You know, even whether you're extroverted, introverted, you still crave it.
Yes.
So that's what people want. And so what I often find in organizations from a leadership perspective is you would have heard that people talk about silos in organizations. You know, you might have A crew doesn't interact well with B crew, as an example. Or this department doesn't talk to this department. Now, I used to think that these are created through organizational designs, but they're not. They're created by leaders. Silos are created by leaders. How well leaders communicate with each other and build those relationships. If leaders do it really well, those silos break down and people feel more of a team, more of a community from a bigger scale. Very quick story to explain this.
Yeah.
When I was in the army, and this is a while ago, you find that you've got your section. So just for simplicity, we'll call it one section and two section. And these two sections is like a small team. You'd be down the pub, and you might have a little bit of a rivalry, and so it might end up in a bit of a blue. So you might, having a bit of a go at each other, a few drinks, and then you're having a bit of a knock on.
Character building.
But then, character building. It happens, and it's all harmless, but So, you know, that's 1 and 2 section. But then, you know, the next week you're in a pub and you've got 1 and 2 section, and over there it's 3 and 4 section, but you're under now, instead of thinking of 1 and 2 section, you're now thinking of, say, Alpha company and Bravo company. So you're now brought together through a common mindset. Hang on a minute, last week we were feuding, but now we're a part of the same team against Bravo. And this happens at other scales. You know, you might get infantry versus artillery, or you might get army versus navy, you know, and it all happens in different scenarios. Organizations are no different, right? So, you know, you might have A crew versus B crew, and then you've now got maintenance versus operations, or you've got mining versus maintenance, or whatever it might be. It's what we put in front of people to bring people together under common goals and mindset, right? So I think if leaders can have a collaborative narrative rather than a competitive narrative, I think that's what really it makes us feel safer. It makes us feel like people around us, we've got a bigger community. And I think that is really, it sounds so simple, but it's a thing that's such a big barrier in organizations.
Yeah, like when you say that, what I think leaders probably require more so is the EQ, the emotional intelligence. That's what I do feel. Emotional intelligence is much more important than IQ. And that's what I was wanting to ask you before, but we kind of went off track. But I'm curious, when you said about the 5 levels, and what was the name? Daniel Goldman?
Daniel Goldman, yeah. He wrote about emotional intelligence in 1995, 96. He had a book about it. And there was like 5 components to it.
Yeah, and I know you said empathy is one, which is an obvious one. Being able to say no was you said was another one. So having clear boundaries, was that?
Right.
Yeah, I'm curious.
Yeah, you're going to test me.
At least you know the 5 steps off the top of your head. That is, we can quickly Google it.
No. Hang on, this is a good test. I should know it. So what we were talking about before was self-regulation, right? Yeah. So, and part of that is like saying no. But the first one is self-awareness, right? Because when you look at self-awareness, I like to look at this like it's no different to risk management, right? You can't put a control in place if you don't identify the hazard, right? So for self-awareness, you can't do anything about it if you're not aware that that's one of your behaviors, biases, mindsets, strengths, etc. Right? So self-awareness is a big part of it. Yeah. And that's one of the first things that we work with teams. You know, we generate awareness of, you know, what your strengths are, maybe what your flaws might be, or, you know, your challenges might be. And it's not about fixing them. It's just about being aware of it. Okay. Then I mentioned empathy. Empathy is definitely a strong part of it, you know, and it's pretty self-explanatory. It's not sympathy, it's empathy. So it's about the understanding of people's thoughts and feelings. I said self-regulation. There's one that always is motivation. Oh, I thought I was going to forget that one.
Yeah, there it is.
Right. Motivation. And that's kind of goes back to what I was talking about before around values. You know, there might be values-driven motivation, but understanding other people's motivations too is a big part of that. It's essentially the why, what's driving certain things. Yeah. And the other one I said was like reading the room. So that's your like interpersonal skills, your social skills. And that's a big part of it, right? Because that helps communication. It helps, you know, building relationships. It helps everying. Yeah. So I'm really impressed I remembered those, to be honest.
Well done, Scott. Full points.
Self-regulation would be the resilience building as well, wouldn't it? It'd be how you, have resilience in a situation, would you say?
Yeah, it's certainly a part of it. You know, self-regulation can definitely lead into resilience. I like to think of it as putting your boundaries in place, you know, knowing when to switch off and on from things. Again, I'm speaking from experience where I haven't done it well to doing it fairly well now. I used to be so bad at it for the right reasons, right intent. I told my teams, hey, look, I basically told them I'm available to you 24/7, right? You know, if you need anything, just email me, send me a message. And, you know, this is when I first started looking after other leaders. And again, right intent, wanted to help people, wanted to be supportive, but it was at my detriment. I told them that I never switch off, even though I wanted them to do it and asked them to do it. My behavior told them otherwise. So, yeah, self-regulation is definitely underappreciated part of emotional intelligence for self and others.
Yeah.
If you do it well, you lead by example. People learn from it.
And I think it's all connected one to the other. Like that comes back to the self-awareness. And I think, yeah, truly knowing yourself would probably be a huge help when you're out there, you know, battling it all out there.
I love that you keep latching onto the emotional intelligence. It's such a powerful thing. And you've probably been through scenarios where you've had leaders that aren't very emotionally intelligent.
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah. And this is, so it resonates with a lot of people.
Yeah.
Do you know, look, this has been a problem forever and a day. There's so much literature out there around leadership, but you got to ask why we still get it wrong, you know, and it's because of the environments we're in. It's because it's easier to just do rather than put the energy into actually the things that are going to pay dividends. And I think organizations are starting to see this, and individuals are starting to see the value in it, because it's, particularly in Australia, we find that we're so focused on the here and now rather than the long-term investment of investing in people. But retention improves, people feel valued, they, you know, they perform better. They also have extra discretionary effort, so they want to do more for you without even being asked. So these things, like, they really pay dividends, and it's just a force multiplier. But the thing is, we've recognized that this is such a significant challenge for people. I really love what you said about IQ, right? So I'm trying not to get on my bandwagon here because I get so passionate.
Do it.
All right. So don't encourage me. So okay, we generally get promoted because we're really good at something. People go, hey, you're great at that, you know, welding job or driving that truck. How about you lead people? And we go, sweet, I'd love to, right? And then you get there and you go, man, I
different skill set.
Yeah, exactly, right? So you know, you get promoted through IQ and technical capability, and it's sink or swim whether you got EQ, because companies don't necessarily have ways to build that in you. And so then what happens is every now and again they'll go, hey, we'll send you to a workshop or a course, and they're great in the moment, you know, because you go, oh, you start building some self-awareness and you get some tools and stuff. They're great, and then what happens is you go through the weekend, or the energy dies off, and you get back on the Monday morning, you just go straight into default mode again because you're back in the environment and you're not thinking about it. And and you know, some people will still take things and still make it work, but most of it kind of just fades. And then the other problem is it's not always available to the people that really need it. So, you know, that first supervisor or team leader in an organization is the one that needs it the most, and they're the ones that seldom get it. You know, it's usually going to the executives or, you know, the CEOs or whatever, getting the investment from an organizational perspective top down. But the way to shift culture in an organization is start right at that front line. You know, build it from right at the coalface. And so we've really been trying to tap into this for organizations to try and shift it. And I've seen a lot of, like we were talking about before, and Bart, your example before, like it's everywhere. And I really believe that if we shift the culture from the front line over time, that will shift the culture in the organizations, right? Because, you know, yesterday's supervisor is tomorrow's CEO, right? So what we've been doing in hindsight is we built something called, we call it Vanguard. It's a accessible online, incredibly low cost platform where new and emerging leaders can join week to week, get, you know, a staged rollout of leadership concepts, from learning about themselves, leading themselves, to leading others, to leading in a system over weeks and months. But they do it in a community-based setting, and it's the fact that it's online, you know, it makes it so much more accessible to people rather than waiting for an organization to go, hey, let's put you in a room and let's do this consistently. And so this is really going to help shift the dial. So excited about it.
I'm going to have to sign up, Scott. You can count me in. You can see me nodding my head because I'm so glad that you brought that up, Scott, because that transition from, as we said, coalface to leadership is rarely mapped out in organizations. And people either move up through those organizations or move into those leadership positions with the assumption that they do have that strong EQ and know how to lead others. But quite often, as you pointed out, Scott, it is two different skill sets, and the latter is not often as well, I guess, developed, or you sort of tend to learn it on the job.
But don't look for it.
Or don't look for it. But I just want to, I want to change the direction here a little bit, and I want to put out the word failure. Quite often in organizations, going back to people are inherently good. I do believe that as well. I do believe people do the best they can in every situation. Obviously, pressure is and demand and time is a big factor. And quite often, organizations, leaders, members are put under pressure so much that a lot of these EQ skills, a lot of other things start to go out the window, and failure starts to creep in. How do you, in your experience, see people deal with failure, and what are some tools that you've learned over your time?
Oh, lots to unpack in this one. Yeah, there's probably two things I take from the question too. There's the aspect of failure and how we are under pressure, because just for the latter, when you're under pressure, you go to your default mode. So you go to your lowest level of setting. So if you've had lots of experience, you'll default to that experience. If you've had no experience, you might go to water. But in a lot of cases, when you're under pressure, how you want to be goes out the window. So and there's lots to unpack in that space about what you can do with that. In terms of failure, there's a few things that come up around failure. A lot of people talk about how important it is. Again, one of my favorite quotes is, experience is a cruel teacher. It gives the exam and the lesson. And so I think failure is actually very important. Sometimes I find saying failure is not necessarily the right word for it.
Yeah.
I think it's, but it's a thing that we all understand, right? And failure has a negative connotation to it. Because if something has gone wrong and it's failed, but you've been able to look at it and learn from it, I don't see that as a failure. I see that as, okay, you've learned, which is actually a benefit, right? That's success.
Step to success.
Yeah, absolutely. But there are people that continually do the same thing over and over again, don't learn from it. So that could be problematic. So when it comes to failures, hey, I've made heaps. I'm actually starting to write a book called 100 Ways I Failed as a Leader.
I don't believe that, Scott.
But every single one of them has, led me to something else. And there could be simple things like, look, there was one time where I was calling out a team member in a team room for something that he did amazing the day before. I was like, this was awesome. And after that meeting, he came up to me and said, hey, don't ever do that again. I was like, oh, so what? What do you mean? And he goes, yeah, don't call me out for, stuff in front of people. I don't like it.
Oh,
And
wow.
I was like, oh, never even knew this. And I was like, well, I didn't even know how to respond. And I'm like, look, thanks for telling me. I won't do it again. And then what happened is, fast forward, I don't know, 6 months or something, he came up for his 15-year anniversary, right, in the company. So I brought him in for a one-on-one, and I made a certificate and stuff like that. And I said, hey, look, just want to congratulate you on 15 years. Well done. And just so you know, the reason why we're having it one-on-one, not in front of a group, is because of the feedback you gave me. So I'm mindful that you don't like being called out. And he goes, no, this is fine. This is a milestone. It's okay. I was like, what do I do?
How do you know?
Yeah. So just because exactly. There's no template for every scenario, right? It's always going to be different. Which, back to your point, Michelle, is why emotional intelligence is so important.
Well, I was actually thinking, like, even just with Bart's question, like, I feel like emotional intelligence is kind of a key to many things, like being able to see a different perspective, having clear boundaries around yourself and towards others. Like, there's so many aspects that it would help in life. So I feel it's a huge gift for us all to develop. But even like the 5 steps you said before, I was like, oh yeah, like I'm very empathetic, but when it comes to boundaries, am I as clear as I would like to be? Or am I a little bit, I also find it sometimes hard to say no, and I just take, yep, I'll do it. Like, whether that's just being a bit more like people pleasing, which isn't maybe the most emotionally intelligent either. So
Yeah.
it's
we confuse emotional intelligence with empathy, right?
Exactly.
And it's great to hear you reflecting on that, because to your question before around self-regulation and resilience, right? So if you're great holistically with emotional intelligence, it also helps with resilience. And I love my analogies and metaphors. It's just like putting your mask on before helping others, right? If you really care about helping others, being resilient, being, great at self-regulation, self-awareness, all those factors, they help you help others.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, there you go.
I was going to say, now, Scott, in all of this craziness and fulfillment and everything else that's going on, how do you fill your own cup? How do you look after your own physical, mental health and well-being? Do you sauna at all?
Well, I think you know that one. Yeah. Probably not as much as I should, but I definitely do. Right. I enjoy a good sauna. I haven't done it for a little while. I'm actually going next Thursday, but axe throwing is brilliant for me because it just keeps me on my mind in the present.
I love that.
And it's good for social interaction as well. You just go with a couple of mates, and it's a great alternative to going down the pub and drinking, right? So I don't drink nowadays, so just going there and in between throwing axes, you're just constantly having a conversation. So I really enjoyed that. Probably don't do it enough. Look, I love my fitness. I've actually been doing BJJ for a little while now, so I'm enjoying that. I'm crazily.
Tell us about it.
Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Very nice. Yeah.
Yeah. I got pulled into that by Bram, and it's fantastic. I actually didn't have an appreciation. I've done martial arts and stuff historically, but it's only been like Muay Thai and Krav Maga, and so this is quite different. And I'm learning that my weight can be a strength or a disadvantage. Same with strength. When people, I've seen people that are half my size that could just absolutely pretzel me without even thinking. It's insane.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like a chess game. So I really do enjoy it. And what else? So yeah, just general fitness. But I used that marathon analogy earlier. I've never been one that's enjoyed running. And I mentioned this in a group chat that we have. I went for a run. It was only like a K or something, and I said, "Man, I hate running." And this guy said, "He said, I wish I could run. I can't run anymore because of my knees." And it just hit home. I was like, "Wow, what am I complaining about? I can run. I'm physically able, and here I am just moaning about something that somebody else wished they could do."
Yeah.
I was like, "Screw this! I'm going to shift my mind." And then I went, "I'm going to just go for a run. I'm going to try and just think about the running and enjoy it." And next thing you know, I ran 3Ks, and I was like, "Oh!" And now I'm running 4Ks and 5Ks, and I went, "Screw it! I'm going to go do City to Surf in August."
Nice.
So now I've developed that
HBF fun runs. Yes.
Yeah, that was just on, but yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. So and then depending on how that goes, I might look at a marathon. So we'll see.
Beautiful.
How else do I fill my cup? Look, I'm very, very fortunate because my cup gets filled when I coach, when I'm helping somebody else, when I'm there for somebody else. That's so rewarding. So it almost feels selfish in some regard, but being there to help somebody it's pretty fulfilling. I also I didn't mention at the start, I volunteer for a company called or an organisation called Disaster Relief Australia. So on occasion I'll deploy around Australia and as a volunteer and just bring the little skills that I've had historically to help somebody who's recovering from disaster. So that's another thing I find quite rewarding as well.
Yeah, amazing. Just to wrap up then, what do you hope people feel after spending time with you?
Yeah, well, better. Look, I hope they feel clearer because it's not about, and this is in general, when you're having a chat with somebody, clarity is the key thing. People bounce off how they're thinking and feeling, and sometimes just getting something off your chest, you feel better. And that does provide clarity. So yeah, I just hope that somebody's had a positive shift, and positivity is absolutely contagious. So that's what I hope people feel when they've spent some time with me.
Well, I can assure you that, well, I do. I feel like, there's people you spend time with that can drain you or they can energize you, and you definitely do lift the energy. So
And I can attest to that. Every time I speak with Scott, absolutely fills my cup. Scott, you've got a great energy about you and a real depth of knowledge. And I do encourage everyone to really reach out and strike a conversation, because I believe there's a lot more here to unpack, and we've only scratched the surface. For those who want to get in touch, Scott, what is the best way to do that?
First of all, I think I'm going red again. There must be something wrong with this camera. That's very kind. Thanks, guys. They can get in touch with me. Look, my email is scott@hindsightleadership.com. That's probably the easiest way to get in touch with me. They can reach out on LinkedIn, connect on LinkedIn. But yeah, I'm happy to help wherever I can.
Perfect. We'll put all that into the details as well. So
we will.
Do that, yeah.
Beautiful. Again,
thank you to both of you. Thank you for having me on. This has been awesome. Really enjoyed it.
Yes. Thank you so much.
And likewise, thank you for taking the time. Again, every time I speak with you, I learn something new. So I hope there's a lot of takeaways here, which I'm sure there is. And we look forward to seeing you again soon.
Thank you. I appreciate your time.
1, 2.